Thank you, Hugh Hewitt. Oh my gosh, this shock collar around my beefy neck is going to keep me in line today. You know me as the senior columnist at townhall.com, where I have an article this morning on stuff and occurrences and things. You also know me as a Los Angeles trial lawyer, a retired United States Army colonel, and the author of the Kelly Turnbull series of action-packed conservative-themed novels. The latest one is Crisis. The next one, The Split, drops in July. You'll want to organize your life around reading those books. This here, folks, is the Hugh Hewitt radio program rundown. Let's get started. United States conducted airstrikes against 3 targets in Syria yesterday. Our guys over there, who are still over there, have been subjected to UAV attacks by an Iranian-backed militia. Our bombers struck. Is this ever going to end? I mean, we've been going on and on. This is, if this is victory, I think I need to go back to the Army War College and re-study up what victory looks like. Chris Murphy, a Democrat from Connecticut, had something interesting to say. I know, right? Hold on. I know there's people swerving off the road going, did Schlichter just say Chris Murphy had something interesting to say? Usually you can count on this guy for the unintentional comedy relief that we all need so much. But he said something interesting today about that on when he issued a statement saying, my concern is the pace of activity directed at U.S. forces and the repeated retaliatory strikes against Iranian proxy forces, because there was another one in February, are starting to look like what would qualify as a pattern of hostilities under the War Powers Act. Now, look, I am not going to put my lawyer hat on and talk to you about the dubious constitutionality of the War Powers Act, but the War Powers Act is in effect-ish. And maybe we need to be looking a little closer at that right now. Because if this is going to go on, I don't think it's too much to ask the American people, what do you think? I remember I came back from Desert Storm, America's last real victory in war, which was about 30 years ago. I came back, I went to Loyola Law School, and we did con law, constitutional law, the first year. And I recall my professor, I don't remember his name. I was partying a little bit, and I don't remember his name, but he said, I'd like to take a poll of you. Who thinks that the president should be able to send us to war without the Congress, the representatives of the American people, raising their hand and saying yes? And I put my hand up, or I did not put my hand up. Everybody else put their hand up. I, the only veteran in the class of about 100 and some, was the only guy there who thought, I kind of like to have a Congress behind me, because that means the American people are behind me. That's just me. And I think after, gosh, how long have we been there? We're over 18 years in Iraq. Maybe we need to revisit it. Just saying, throwing it out there. Think about it. Keep it in mind. Okay. More stuff going on. Joe Biden on infrastructure. Now, the other day, the moderate Republicans came out and stood with him in the White House. He took a break from his Matlock Marathon and said, we've got a deal on infrastructure. Here it is. This is great. And everybody was high-fiving each other and patting each other on the back. And then 2 hours later, he said, oh, by the way, I'm not going to sign it unless I also get, through reconciliation, all the Democrat pork barrel stuff that I want. The human infrastructure, which is not infrastructure. It's just typical Democrat handouts. And everyone was aghast, not because they thought that Joe Biden was going to shaft the Republican moderates who forged this bipartisan consensus, but because he had the poor taste to say it out loud. So he walked it back this weekend and said, no, I didn't mean exactly what I said. I meant exactly the opposite of what I said, wink, wink, wink. So it's kind of a bait and switch, and then wander out to the Rose Garden to chase squirrels around until they kind of, shuffle him and shepherd him back into the Oval Office. Come on, Mr. President. Come on, Murder, She Wrote's almost on. I got your shawl. Your gruel is waiting. He's not a well man. He's not even being a bad president well. But that's where we are. And then, of course, the Republicans are going, well, you know, I'm relieved that he clarified things. I trust Joe Biden. Why would you do that? If you're a Republican, why would you trust Joe Biden not to shaft you? Why would you do that? I'd also trust Lucy. This time, Lucy's going to hold the football. I will kick the football this time. You're not going to kick the football this time. Trust me, you're not. Tragedy in Florida. The latest count is 9 people dead, 152 missing in this disastrous building collapse. Apparently in 2018, there was a municipal inspection of the building. They found dangerous conditions. What did the owners do? Apparently not enough. First lawsuit's already been filed. It won't be the last. Look, if you are the insurance company for this property management group, for the owner of this property, this is when you go, hi, I'm tendering my whole policy. Max limits. Here you go. Here you go. Divide it up. This, you know, it's stunning. And I have to say, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida is doing a fantastic job there. He is out there. He is with the people. Now, look, he's not going to personally manage the disaster operation. That's not what a governor does. I know. I ran disaster operations. I worked on them when I was in the California National Guard for years. I worked at state headquarters. I commanded 2 battalions in northern San Diego during the fire crisis. You know, you start with the municipality, then the state, then the feds. Ron DeSantis has been doing a fantastic job. In fact, I was in touch with Ron DeSantis' people. I asked him, can you come on today to talk to me, Kurt Schlichter's, I guest host for Hugh Hewitt? And he said, I'm sorry, through his people. I'm sorry, I have to go to Surfside. I have to be with these people. I'm not very accepting of excuses for people not appearing with me when I guest host on the Hugh Hewitt radio program. This is a excuse that I not only accept, but that I heartily approve of. He's doing his job. He's doing what he should be doing. But that is not stopping the mainstream media from attempting to kneecap the guy who is gaining in popularity among the conservative base. Ron DeSantis is making it happen. He's got a different style from Donald Trump. He's got a different feel. We don't have the mean tweets issue. And I got to tell you, folks, I love the mean tweets. If you follow me on Twitter, at Kurt Schlichter, and I don't suggest you do that with children around, you know that mean tweets are the sea in which I swim. So when people go, yeah, I like Donald Trump, except for the mean tweets, this does not compute to me. That was part of the magic. For me. DeSantis doesn't do that. DeSantis has a different style. He gets out there and he just does it. And people are dragged along with him. Do you think that Greg Abbott, who has turned very hard to the right in recent weeks and months, would be doing that if just a few states to the east, Ron DeSantis wasn't setting the pace? A wise person, whose name I will not speak because he'll just mock me for the remainder of the show, said Greg Abbott is Ron DeSantis 4 weeks later. And that was a brilliant way of putting it. And I wish I could take credit for it. Sadly, I cannot. When we come back, I want to talk to you about where this is going. Because Ron DeSantis is definitely in the running. Conservatives are interested in, including the hardcore conservative circles that I, circulate in, are buzzing about Ron DeSantis. They're excited, and some people are beginning to say, as I said in my Thursday town hall column, maybe we need to look at him instead of President Trump. People are saying that. I want your opinion. I want to know what you think. Do we need to look beyond President Trump in case he runs? 800-520-1234. That is 800-520-1234. Tell me, are you willing to look beyond Donald Trump? in 2024? I'm Kurt Schlichter, guest hosting for the great Hugh Hewitt. Stick around. We're back on the Hugh Hewitt radio program. I'm guest host Kurt Schlichter, and of course, that's one of the great bands of the alternative era, Blondie. I love it. Now, the Blondie of American news reporting. Salena, see, I'm just trying to segue, Salena. How are you doing this morning? That's a great compliment. You know, Irina and I love Blondie. We're actually going to go see Blondie again next May, when, by which time California may be free. So,
the Fair Circuit?
Oh no, that's a Bachman Turner Overdrive. No, they're actually on the bill with Bauhaus and Psychedelic Furs. Now Kurt's a conservative? Yes, I am. Salena, how are you today? You've been busy.
Yes, I have been busy. I'm swell. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm giddy. I've got my coffee. It's dark 30, and you have a really moving article about. It's titled. It's on the Washington Examiner. It's titled "A Labor Dispute in Which No One Can Win," in which very skilled workers at about 9 or 10 plants. For a technical steel company, not just raw steel, but they make very technical steel products, are on strike over preserving medical benefits. And this has been going on for almost 90 days. No one's winning this. And the Biden administration is just ignoring it.
Yeah, it's really kind of stunning. So the strike is against ATI. As you pointed out, it's a precision steel plant. They make very specialty steel that goes into things like all-clad cookery. But they also were on emergency around-the-clock production of the respirators during COVID. So these guys make the stuff that we need, in a better way of putting it. And they haven't had a raise in 7 years. They make a good salary, but the really sort of heart of this strike is over the new hires coming in and getting different benefits. And you say, well, okay, why is that a big deal? Like, well, these are tough jobs, and you're working side by side. It creates this really terrible tension when the men and women that work beside each other, skilled artisans, skilled laborers, and they're making different amounts of money, and so they want to make sure that doesn't happen. It's not even about a salary. It's about having the same tier system, in the healthcare. And what I think I find so incredibly interesting is that during the campaign, Biden secured the support, the endorsement from the United Steelworkers leadership. And everywhere you went, every event that he had steelworkers behind him, right? They're used as a prop. But both Biden and Harris, in particular Harris, who was just here a couple days ago, none of them have met with any members of these steelworkers to either give them support and or listen to them, or even try to comprehend what their problem is.
Well, Salena, Zito, is there an opportunity here for Republicans to come in? Because I look at this, and I would think that if a guy like, I don't know, Donald Trump was still in office, he could call up the ATI head or CEO. He could call up the head of the union and say, come on into the White House. Let's work together and get this resolved, because these two groups seem to me natural components of the kind of coalition that conservatives are trying to build.
They are, absolutely. They're definitely part of the coalition, that the populist coalition that came together and put Trump in office. And they're still part of this conservative populist coalition that is still going on today. I have argued forever and a day that they came before Trump. He was the result of them. He didn't cause them. And there are senators, I suppose, local Republicans have come and sat with them, but they don't have the power or the cachet that Biden would have in sort of, as you put it, cause the two to just pull the heads together, knock them around a little, and say, okay, let's figure this out, you guys.
Well, Salena, we've got about 1 minute. Time flies when you're having fun. In the New York Post, you have an article, How Liberals Turned on J.D. Vance, Working Class Author of Hillbilly Elegy. We only have about 30 seconds. What happened? I thought he was the bridge which would allow our coastal elite to understand what was happening in mid-America. And then when he came out as what he is, kind of a traditional American populist, they've recoiled in horror.
Oh, yeah. He was one of them, right? Because he made it to Yale. And then all of a sudden they want nothing to do with him when they understood he is a conservative populist. And he rolls out this week in Middletown, Ohio, that he's going to run for U.S. Senate. And I think he is going to be formidable because he bridges the suburban and blue-collar mindset.
Well, thank you very much, Salena Zito. I appreciate it. Stick around. We got a lot more coming up on the Hugh Hewitt radio program. I'm guest host Kurt Schlichter. This is Kurt Schlichter, senior columnist at townhall.com. Noted Los Angeles trial lawyer, retired United States Army colonel, author of the Kelly Turnbull series of conservative action novels. And, of course, the guy who's responsible for producer Dwayne having his finger hovering over the dump button in case I toss FCC compliance out through the window. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome a regular back to the Hugh Hewitt radio program, the editor of Punchbowl News, Jake Sherman. Jake, good morning. Congratulations on Punchbowl News.
Appreciate that. Good to be with you.
I am a subscriber, and I have read it this morning. You've got some good inside information, and I kind of want to use that as the outline for our little exploration here. The first big thing is Nancy Pelosi seems to be bound and determined to go forward with a January 6th commission. What's the story?
Yeah, she is going to go. She is going to go forward with a select committee, which is created. She could create and she could pass it on the floor with Democratic members, and she doesn't have to go through the Senate. So the real question will be how Republicans handle this. I mean, the immediate question. There will be a lot of questions that will be answered.
I am brimming with questions right about now, Jake Sherman. Tell me, will this select committee have subpoena power?
Yes, almost certainly.
Okay.
Yeah. But here's why a lot of people, including some Republicans, wanted a bipartisan committee. So now Democrats can issue subpoenas unilaterally. If there was a committee that was created by statute, by the House and the Senate, Republicans would have had to agree with every subpoena. So there's upside and downside here. The upside politically for Republicans is that Democrats own this process and Republicans are going to force them to own this process. The downside is they have absolutely no control over the trajectory of this committee.
Interesting, Jake Sherman of Punchbowl News. Now, look, I was in the Los Angeles riots, so I'm kind of a snob about riots and insurrections. And I find the January 6th one distinctly lacking in the kind of violence that I saw up close and personal on the streets of Los Angeles as a junior Army officer. But the Democrats seem bound and determined to make this the alpha and omega of Republican perfidy. What is Minority Leader McCarthy's play? Does he go along with this and allow some Republicans on it? Or does he just say, all yours, Nancy, we're not playing?
I think he has to put people on it. And I mean, listen, of course, this was not nearly as violent and as bloody, frankly, as the riots in Los Angeles all those years ago. I wasn't at those riots. I was at January 6th. And most people who are supportive of this committee suggest there is no reason to not investigate in some way, shape, or form what happened.
Well, what is the reason they're giving to investigate? Is the information that they don't believe they know? Because they've already essentially, if not through impeachment, convicted Donald Trump of causing it. They've already convicted the entire Republican Party of being insurrectionists. What is the piece of the puzzle that they need to fill in, or is this just another way to stretch Republicans out on the rack?
Well, I think Republicans would say it's the latter, right? Republicans would say it's another way to stretch them out on the rack. And Democrats would suggest that, and I think there's some truth to this. I think there's truth to the fact that they will have people testify. They will have subpoenas out. I'm sure they'll try to get people like Mark Meadows and even, frankly, Kevin McCarthy, perhaps. And I don't think they'll go for McCarthy, but I think they will have. Listen, Bill Barr in this article at The Atlantic this morning talked to a reporter, to John Carl of ABC News, also somebody who I believe comes in this program, and I have to imagine those kinds of people, not John Carl, but Bill Barr, might be called in front of this committee. So I think that kind of, so the questions they want to answer is what was happening that day. And I think I think that is something that they want to fill in. Again, I don't know that it will be as sexy and as useful, perhaps, as Democrats think, but I think that they'll want to figure out what happened that day specifically. And furthermore, what were the failings in the intelligence realm from the U.S. Capitol Police and the FBI and those kinds of agencies that let this happen?
Well, Jake Sherman of Punchbowl News, here's my question, and I want to move on in a second to infrastructure, but let me just stay here for a second. Are the Democrats getting polling and focus group information that this January 6th fetish is something Americans are interested in? I pull up at the gas station. It's nearly $5 a gallon. Okay, prices are going up everywhere. Afghanistan's going off. We got, the CRT stuff in the schools, and they're going back 6 months to relitigate the administration of Donald Trump. Is that something they think is going to score them points? Are they getting any info, any hard evidence that it will?
I don't know that they are or are not on that issue. I think there are a lot of people who live that day who want answers, members of Congress specifically. But, I mean, listen, Congress can walk and chew gum at the same time. It's not as if they aren't doing other things. But, listen, they're not going to have hearings on things like critical race theory in schools because Democrats control the House of Representatives. So, if Republicans have an agenda that they'd like to enact, they might be able to come 2023 because they are favored to win back the House of Representatives.
Well, Jake Sherman of Punchbowl News. Let's move on to the infrastructure bill. Last week we had the bipartisan compromise. 2 hours later, Joe Biden essentially says, "Yeah, I'm not going to do that." Then he walks it back this weekend, and the Republicans on this bipartisan group are kind of shaking their heads, going, "Yeah, okay. Well, I accept what Biden says." Do they really, or are they feeling like they were out on a limb and Biden sawed them off?
I think they felt like that, but I think they felt like Biden has superglued the limb back together. I don't think, to be honest with you, I don't think this is a political limb for those Republicans. Listen, there are two different kinds of Republicans. I don't think the Republican leadership, John Barrasso, is terribly interested in this compromise. I think Mitch McConnell is fine with letting it proceed. But listen, we're a long way from home, so to speak. We have, there are 5 Republicans or however many, something like that support this compromise. You still need to get another 15, 15 to 20. So I think
are those votes out there? Are they up for grabs, Jake Sherman? Or are the Republicans saying, if you guys are going to pass a bunch of taxes under reconciliation, we're not playing?
They are not saying that at the moment. I mean, listen, it is well within Democrats' rights to pass. It's well within Congress's rights to pass this bill, this bipartisan bill, $1 trillion of spending, $500 billion of pay-fors, and then for Democrats to move on to reconciliation. And then it's up to them to whether they can get 50 votes to pass reconciliation, which at this point, it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to, at least as envisioned by Chuck Schumer and Bernie Sanders. Now, that all being said, it's going to be a long, arduous process, and Republicans are going to really have to push to get 20 people to vote for this package, and it's a long way from done.
Well, Jake Sherman, I've got to think that there are several moderate moderate-ish Democrat senators, including some running for re-election, who have probably got to be sending flowers and chocolates to Kristen Sinema and to Joe Manchin for taking all the heat as the stumbling block to the progressives' dreams. Is that good analysis?
Yes. I don't know if they're – yes, I would say so. I would say also they're catching a lot of the flack. They're catching a lot of the flack for Democrats who don't want to blow up the filibuster but don't want to say it. And also, I mean, I think to some degree there are people who see them as a useful stumbling block. Of course, the majority of the party does not see them as useful, but rather as an impediment to a larger, more ambitious agenda. But you don't get to you and I talk about this all the time. You don't get to govern with the Congress that you want to have. You have to govern with the Congress that you have. And the Congress that Joe Biden has is a 50-50 Senate and a 4-seat majority in the House. That is the reality. And if you'd like to change that, if Democrats want to change that dynamic, they need to go win some seats. They need to go win some House and Senate seats. That's just the reality of what's going on.
Well, thank you, Jake Sherman of Punchbowl News. You guys are really killing it. I'm enjoying your outline. I don't agree with everything you guys say, but then again, sometimes it's good to read things that you don't necessarily agree with. So everybody go out there, sign up for Punchbowl News, see what's happening up on the Hill and in D.C., because most of us don't live there. Jake Sherman, he swims in those waters. Thank you, Jake Sherman of Punchbowl News. I am Kurt Schlichter. This is the Hugh Hewitt radio program. I want you to stick around. We're fighting the law here. I'm Kurt Schlichter, guest hosting for the great Hugh Hewitt. That is The Clash. You can always tell when you get some cool, kind of punky, late 70s, early 80s rock and roll as the Hugh Hewitt bumper music that I, Kurt Schlichter, senior columnist at townhall.com, noted trial lawyer, as I mentioned, retired United States Army colonel, author of the Kelly Turnbull series of conservative action novels, guest hosts, because the music rocks, except when they play Springsteen. I don't know what the hell you were thinking. Producer Dwayne, you're going to have to explain to me this Fox Chiron at some point later today. Mariners pitcher ejected after sticky check. So you got that coming up. When you can explain, it's a sports ball thing of some sort.
It's a sports ball thing. I'll tell you that off air.
Okay. Well, you can. Is it one of those FCC things? Because it sounds kind of, it sounds iffy.
No.
We'll cover it later. I'm sure I've got open segments. So right now, I want to fill this segment with what my next guest has to offer. She's new to the Hugh Hewitt radio program. She is the Washington editor of The Spectator. She is Amber Athey, and she is writing up a storm. Hi, Amber. Welcome to the Hugh Hewitt radio program.
Hi, Kurt. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, Amber, you've been writing a whole bunch of stuff, and what really caught my eye a little while ago, last week, was your article, "The Desantis Doctrine," because you went and you talked to a bunch of kind of hardcore conservatives, the fellow fish in the pond in which I swim, who are saying, "Hey, look, we dig the president. We like Donald Trump, appreciate what he did, but we've got to keep our options open." How are the conservatives approaching the idea that Donald Trump may run again in 2024?
I think you nailed it. They're grateful for what Trump did. He obviously created this sort of groundswell outsider movement, this skepticism of the elites, and also a turn in the Republican Party away from this neoconservatism to more of a populist political movement, and implementing policies that protect the working class. And he will always be remembered for that. People are grateful to him for that. However, there's so much baggage at this point associated with the president, associated with Trumpism and the people that he brought into the fold, that there's a fear that if he does run again in 24, even if he does win, is he really in the position to implement the policies that he made so popular?
Well, Amber Athey of The Spectator, I wrote about this at Town Hall last week on Thursday. Republicans are questioning where they want Trump again. I ran a very unscientific poll on my Twitter account, which is, let's just say, it's heavily conservative. And I asked, who do you want to see run? And it was essentially 46% Trump, 50% Ron DeSantis. And I've been hearing that offline, too. Why do you think, how are Republicans going to navigate this? Because the people who like Donald Trump really, really like Donald Trump, and many of them are not open to the idea that maybe it's time to shop around a little.
Yeah, that will be the rub when it comes to 2024, and the president himself has a huge role to play here. He is still, of course, the leader of the party. He's going to be the kingmaker in 2024. He has to be able to look at this situation and look at what the people want, which polls show that people want, more than anything, a person who is running Trumpian on policy more than they actually want Trump to win. So he has to look at that landscape and be able to say, maybe this isn't the right moment for me, and he has to then pave the way for his successor. Will his ego be able to accept that? Who knows?
Well, Amber Athey of The Spectator, you are also in the conservative circles. You are a reporter. What have you been hearing from Trump world? Is he considering this? Because I've been getting mixed messages.
I've been getting mixed messages as well, and it seems to me that just like in typical Trumpian fashion, they want to have people thinking about this as much as possible and for as long as possible. So a decision is not going to be made until the last possible minute, because one thing that the media did get right about Trump is that he does love the showmanship of politics, and he loves the idea of treating this like a television program. And the longer that he can drag out his decision and keep people on their toes with bated breath, wanting to know whether or not he's going to run for president again, he's going to do that.
And he's kind of waiting to spring the stunning plot twist. Now, last Friday he went to Ohio and he held his first rally since he left office. And as my friend Will Chamberlain pointed out, it kind of had the vibe of a 70s band on the State Fair circuit. It was a lot of the old hits, nothing new. And while the people ate it up, you watch Foghat, they play Slow Ride, everybody claps. And when they say, here's some off my new album, they boo. It's been 8 years almost since Donald Trump came down that elevator, or it will be right when it's time to make a decision, Amber Athey. Does Donald Trump have any sense of a need to do something different, or are we going to see Trump 1.0 again instead of Trump 2.0?
Yeah, I hope that he would evolve with the times, but 8 years is an eternity in politics. People forget just how long that really is and how much the landscape can change in that time period. And the issues that were the issues du jour when he ran the first time around are going to be entirely different. I mean, granted, immigration is set to be a huge issue heading into 2024 because of the way the Biden administration has so massively mishandled being handed this very secure border. But there are new things popping up all the time. One key example is this swell and critical race theory in the schools. And Trump tried to address this with the 1776 project in his last year in office, but that was something that was immediately undone by the next administration because it wasn't done with legislation. It was done with a toothless executive order. And that ended up being the story of a lot of his administration. There weren't many long-term things implemented that could not be undone immediately, which was very similar to what happened when he took over after the Obama administration. And so people are going to be looking for someone who is an effective legislator. And Ron DeSantis thus far has proven himself to be that.
Well, Ron DeSantis has kind of taken the lead because a lot of with the federal government pretty much in the hands of the Democrats, except for arguably the Supreme Court. A lot of what's happening is state and local. We've been seeing it, especially in response to the pathogen that is critical race theory. As people go and challenge their school boards, and as governors like Ron DeSantis take the lead in fighting it. Now, you wrote the Desantis Doctrine on The Spectator. What is the Ron DeSantis Doctrine?
It is someone who is relatively populist on policy, very nationalistic, and is willing to attack the biggest issues of the day without any care for what the media or the left thinks of him. At the end of the day, one of Trump's biggest weaknesses, that although he ran as this outsider candidate, was very bombastic, he really wanted the New York Times and the CNN to respect him and secretly loved him. And this led to a lot of poor decision-making. Ron DeSantis has really not had that whatsoever. He's a longtime listener of Rush Limbaugh, and so he views his job as being a brick wall to any of the left's goals, and he doesn't care what they think about him. So some of his biggest policies that he's signed just in the past few months, this has all happened really quickly, is banning transgender women, also known as biological men, from competing in women's sports. He's banned vaccine passports in his state and actually managed to win a major fight against cruise ships who changed their policies after he signed that legislation. He's attacking Chinese influence as well as critical race theory in universities and in the education system. And you can also go back and look at Ron DeSantis's policies back when he was in Congress as a good guide as to how he would govern. He was quite skeptical of getting involved in wars. He was against getting involved in the Syrian civil war when Obama was not in office. He was in favor of pulling troops from Afghanistan. And down in Florida, he was also expanding the apprenticeship program and the trade school program, so throwing in some support for the working class. So this guy's Trumpian on policy, but he doesn't have all of this extra baggage.
Well, Amber Athey, some of the extra baggage with Donald Trump. Look, I am of the opinion that Donald Trump is like a fixed price menu where there's no substitutions. You're going to get the filet. Sometimes you're also going to get the broccoli. You can't pick and choose with Trump. He's going to come in like a bulldozer. He's also going to do mean tweets, and like some of us, like me, I love mean tweets. That is not the DeSantis way. DeSantis doesn't do the social media engagement like Donald Trump does. Evaluate this theory for me. Donald Trump was what we needed in 2016 because we needed, as conservatives and populists, to show ourselves that we could fight back, that we could say no, and to raise morale and energize people to do it. Now we're at the point of governing. You got somebody like Ron DeSantis who's setting the pace. You got Greg Abbott is following along. I don't think Greg Abbott would be where Greg Abbott is if it wasn't Ron DeSantis dragging him along. And, of course, you got people like Kristi Noem totally botching it and losing all credibility. What do you think? You got about 30 seconds.
I think that's exactly right. Donald Trump was necessary to break down that wall. And you're right. I like the mean tweets, too. I think they're funny. I think they're entertaining. And they serve a purpose sometimes. But Ron DeSantis, when you watch the way he engages with the media, he does so in a way that is backed up by what he's actually doing legislatively. And that is something that the America First movement needs moving forward if they're going to actually implement these priorities that Donald Trump was able to finally give voice to.
Amber Athey, Washington editor of The Spectator, one-word answer, yes or no. Will Donald Trump run for president in 2024?
No.
I agree with you. I am Kurt Schlichter. I am guest host for Hugh Hewitt. We got more to come. Please stick around. Hugh Hewitt, I am Kurt Schlichter, senior columnist at townhall.com. I am a noted Los Angeles trial lawyer and a retired United States Army infantry colonel. I am the author of the Kelly Turnbull series of conservative novels. And I am your guest host today. And it is my distinct pleasure to bring aboard the man who I think was arguably, actually, I think the argument is settled, the best national security advisor the United States has ever had. My friend, great friend of the show, Robert O'Brien. Robert, how are you this morning?
Hey, I'm doing super. Good early morning to you, and thanks for giving Hugh a vacation day.
Well, rub it in that I got you up early. I think you're probably on the West Coast right now, but you as you served as an Army officer. See, even though you were a judge advocate, you had to get up early once in a while.
Very rarely. We weren't tip of the spear like you infantry guys, but no, I was proud of the time I wore the uniform, as I know you were as well.
Well, those were good times, and unfortunately, our American military is still in action in the Middle East. Overnight, there were airstrikes against Iranian-backed Shia militias in Iraq. And it seems odd to me, Robert O'Brien, that President Biden is attempting to revitalize the JCPOA and negotiating with the mullahs, who recently just put in a noted psychotic as their new second in command. And at the same time, he's bombing them. What do you make of this?
Well, look, this is something that we did in the Trump administration and trying to bring a real democracy to Iraq and ensure Iraqi sovereignty from the Iranians. And so in some sense, it's an acknowledgement that the policy the Trump administration had in Iraq was the right one. At the same time, it's hard to reconcile the idea that you're in Vienna offering to lift sanctions, and to some extent, sanctions aren't even being enforced against Iran. Maximum pressure certainly is no longer the policy of the U.S., and yet we're countenancing missile strikes and attacks on U.S. soldiers in Iraq. So, there's a real contradiction. But at the same time, I think the Biden administration realizes that the course we took in Iraq was the proper one. We got our allies engaged there. We've got almost as many NATO troops in Iraq as American troops, and we're defending Iraqi sovereignty against the Iranians. So that goes hand in hand with putting maximum pressure on the mullahs. And so I think what's happening in Vienna is a little bit of a disappointment.
Robert O'Brien, one of the great successes the Trump administration had, and you had a big part of it, were the Abraham Accords, in which the correlation of forces completely changed in the Middle East. Israel and some of the Sunni states, particularly in the Gulf region, basically came into alignment against Iranian Shia hegemony, and this new administration just seems to be throwing that huge achievement out the window. They won't even call them the Abraham Accords. What do you think's going on here?
Well, look, that would be like administrations after Jimmy Carter not calling the Camp David Accords the Camp David Accords. So that's again, I think that's those are some, I'm sure, some petty bureaucrats that aren't happy with the success that we had. But what's worrisome is the some of the back and forth conversations about the Golan Heights, and the Abraham Accords didn't spring out of nothing. It sprang out of the fact that the administration and President Trump created facts on the ground by recognizing the Israeli occupation and subsequent annexation of the Golan Heights, a beautiful area up north of the Sea of Galilee that prior to the 1967 war had been used to shell and bomb Israelis around the Sea of Galilee. After Syria launched an invasion of Israel in 1967, was soundly defeated, and the Israelis took the Golan Heights. That ended, and it was turned into the Golan Heights are now just a garden area of agriculture for Israelis of Druze descent, Jewish descent, Arab descent. President Trump recognized the facts on the ground and recognized that the Golan Heights were now part of it and have been for 60 years part of Israel. He moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And then he used that political capital to pressure and encourage Israel not to engage in further annexations in the West Bank and extending its sovereignty over the West Bank. And that set the table for the Abraham Accords, and we had peace with 4 Arab countries between Israel, Morocco, Sudan, importantly UAE, and Bahrain. And so again, that didn't spring from nowhere. It was a result of hard-headed diplomacy. On the Arab side, when they saw that the United States was prepared to implement a maximum pressure campaign against Iran and to defend them, that encouraged them to enter into those agreements. So it's a very important strategic agreement. In addition to bringing peace to the region, it's important for the defense of our ally Israel, but also the defense of our allies in the Gulf.
Well, Robert O'Brien, I just get a sense that in many ways, although this administration acts as if it's very sophisticated, it's very naive in many ways. Let's take the Golan for an example. As an infantry officer, I look at that high ground and I understand what happened in 1973. If anybody who's interested, go read The Heights of Courage by Colonel Avigdor Kahalani about how his battalion helped stop, about several divisions of Syrian tanks from going over the heights into the heart of Israel. Israel. And to look at that and not understand the strategic necessity of Israeli control of the Golan Heights is so naive. And that's not the only example, but that's a stunning one. How do these people get where they are, not understanding these basic concepts? Because you certainly did.
Well, think about that high ground of the Golan Heights and the tank battles that took place there in '67 and '73. Probably the greatest tank battle since the Second World War, and both captured and defended by the Israelis with a great loss of life and tremendous courage of their tankers and their infantrymen. But had that not happened, you'd have in the Golan Heights right now one of two things. You'd either have ISIS occupying the Golan Heights, where they had their callipate that President Trump destroyed the physical caliphate, but it spread all over Syria, or you'd have the Iranian-backed Assad regime there. And so either one of those options is an absolute non-starter for Israel and for the United States. And if either of those forces were there, Assad's forces or ISIS, it'd make Gaza look like a picnic. So you're 100% correct on the strategic value of the Golan Heights. And it's one of the reasons why Israel understood we had their back, because of the move of the embassy and because of recognizing their sovereignty over Golan. We created tremendous political capital and friendship with our partners in Israel.
Well, Robert O'Brien, former national security advisor under Donald Trump, and an outstanding one. Just last week, we saw the Biden administration ping pong, specifically on the Golan Heights issue. One day they were going to recognize it, then they walked that back. But and you yourself have been mentioned by a number of people as a potential Secretary of State in the next Republican administration. Is our State Department currently in crisis because they can't seem to get their story straight?
Well, the problem that they have is that they saw the success of the Trump administration, whether it was on China and developing the Quad, whether it was in the Middle East with the Abraham Accords, bringing hostages home across the world, encouraging our NATO allies to pay their fair share of their defense and the defense of Europe and the West. That had been a goal of every president since Ronald Reagan, and none of us accomplished it until NATO agreed under President Trump to spend $400 billion over 10 years to defend themselves, money that the U.S. taxpayers don't have to pay now. So you look at those successes, they're sound policies. They want to continue them, but at the same time, there's a knee-jerk reaction, I think, especially among some of the entrenched bureaucracy to undo or push back on anything President Trump did. So they're in a terrible dilemma of looking at policies that are among the most successful in American foreign policy history, and yet at the same time they've got this knee-jerk reaction of wanting to, being repelled by anything that happened in the Trump administration. So
Robert O'Brien,
they're confused right now. Right? Or Kurt, I think that's the. That might be the problem.
I think that's a charitable analysis. Now, Robert, I only have a few seconds left. I heard your speech to the Utah GOP, and I thought it was spectacular. It kind of bridged the old Republicans to the new hardcore ones like myself. Robert O'Brien, yes or no? Would you ever consider running for president of the United States if asked?
Thank you for asking. Right now, let's get the House back in 2022, make Kevin McCarthy Speaker, and I think there are going to be plenty of people running for president in 2024. We'll find a great one for the GOP.
Thank you, Robert O'Brien. This is Kurt Schlichter on the Hugh Hewitt